Sam Colton inherited a machine shop worth $3,247.83. His daughter had the buyer lined up before the ink dried on the appraisal. He drove to Middlesboro alone. With a key that hadn't been used in 2 years and a thermos his wife had packed for him the last winter, she was well enough to stand at the counter. What he found beneath the floor of that shop had been waiting there since 1983, and his father had never once told him what it was for. At 71, 2 years after his wife Carol passed in the back bedroom of the house on Fern Street, Sam Colton sat across a kitchen table from his daughter and listened to her explain what a deed and a lifetime of his father's work were worth to a storage facility developer out of Knoxville. Linda had a laptop. She had a presentation, slides with charts on them, blue and gray, the kind that real estate people make to show you a number and make you feel like the number was always inevitable. She turned the laptop toward him. "The broker says $318,400 if we move fast," she said. "That's the land value, mostly. The building itself needs work, but the lot is zoned commercial and there's interest from a storage facility developer out of Knoxville." Sam looked at the screen. The number was there in large print. $318,400. It did not look like his father's shop. It looked like a cell in a spreadsheet. "You'd have real liquidity, Dad. You could travel, move somewhere warmer." Carol always talked about Florida. She had talked about Florida the way people talk about things they know they probably won't do, fondly, without pressure. He had never been sure if she actually wanted to go or if she just liked having somewhere to point toward. "The listing would go up Friday if we move this week," Linda said. "I just need the deed transfer authorization." She had brought the paperwork. It was in a manila folder next to the laptop. He noticed she had already filled in the date. Sam looked at the presentation for a moment. Then he looked at the folder. "You want to go see it?" he asked. "The shop?" "Yeah." She hesitated. "I already looked at the photos the broker sent. And the county assessor records. I think I have a pretty good—" "I mean in person," Sam said. "Dad, it's 40 minutes. Linda closed the laptop partway, not all the way. "I have a 2 o'clock call with the developer's project coordinator." He nodded. He did not push it. She left the folder on the table when she left. He did not touch it. That evening he sat in the kitchen after dark and did not turn on the overhead light. The folder was still there. He could see its outline in the streetlight coming through the window over the sink. Carol had put up those curtains the second year they were in the house. Yellow with a thin white stripe. He had always meant to ask her why yellow. He had not gotten around to it. He thought about the shop. His father, Everett Colton, had opened Colton Auto and Machine in 1971 on a lot off Cumberland Avenue, 3 blocks from where the ridge started to rise toward the gap. 2 employees, a used hydraulic lift, and an opinion about every engine that had ever been put into a domestic vehicle. Sam had grown up in that shop, had learned to read by reading parts manuals, had learned the particular silence of a man who was concentrating on something that mattered to him. Everett had retired at 81. He had come in 6 days a week until his hands began to shake enough that he did not trust himself under a vehicle anymore. He had locked the door in March of 2021 and told Sam's mother he was done. She had already been gone 8 years by then. He died 14 months later. Linda's presentation had a line item for outstanding property taxes. She had already researched the amount. Sam picked up the folder and put it in the drawer next to the sink where he kept things he was not ready to deal with yet. Behind the utility bills and the folded birthday card from his grandson that he had not thrown away. He went to bed. He did not sleep well. In the morning he drank his coffee standing at the counter the way Everett always had. His father had never sat down for coffee. He'd said sitting down in the morning was how a man trained himself to move slowly. Sam had made fun of him for it once when he was young. He didn't sit down for coffee anymore either. He found the car keys. He drove to Cumberland Avenue. The shop was on the east side of Cumberland Avenue, between a cell phone repair place that had changed hands twice since Sam could remember, and a vacant lot where a tire shop used to be. The tire shop had closed during COVID and nobody had moved in after. There was still a faded outline on the concrete where the signpost had been. Colton Auto and Machine sat back from the road about 30 feet. His father had poured that apron himself in 1974 with help from 2 men from the church and a mixer he'd borrowed from a cousin. Sam remembered being 7 years old and watching the concrete come down gray and wet and smelling like stone dust, and his father smoothing it with a long-handled float, moving backward in slow, careful strokes. He had not been allowed to touch it for 3 days. The apron had cracked since then. A long diagonal fault ran from the northeast corner toward the bay door. Weeds had come up through it, not aggressively but steadily, the way things come back when people stop paying attention. Sam parked on the street. He sat in the truck for a moment. The bay door was down. The smaller entry door to the left had a padlock on it, the same master lock he had put there 2 years ago. The sign above the bay white background, black letters, Colton Auto and Machine, The ampersand slightly higher than it should have been because his father had painted it himself, and was better with engines than with lettering had faded. The black had gone gray, but it was still readable. He got out of the truck. The padlock took 2 tries. His hands were not as certain in the cold as they used to be. He had not told Linda that. He had not told Linda a lot of things, mostly because she had not asked. The door swung inward, and the smell came out to meet him. Oil and metal and concrete dust, and something underneath that, something older, dry and particular. The smell of a place that had been closed up and had been slowly becoming more itself in the dark. It was not unpleasant. It was, if anything, familiar in a way that caught him somewhere behind the sternum and held on. He stood in the doorway for a moment. He did not go in right away. There was a light switch to the left. He found it without looking. His hand knew where it was. The fluorescents flickered, one went dark, 2 others caught, and the shop came up in uneven light, the way he remembered it, always looking in winter when the angle was low. His father's shop. The hydraulic lift was still in the center bay, lowered flat. His father had lowered it before he left that last day, the way he always had, because you didn't leave a lift raised if you weren't going to be there to watch it. The tool chest, a red rolling cabinet, bought second-hand in 1989 and repainted twice, stood against the north wall. The drawers were closed. His father had closed every drawer before he left, too. It was the kind of habit that gets so deep into a man it becomes indistinguishable from character. He walked to the tool chest and put his hand on it. The metal was cold. He opened the top drawer. Sockets organized by size in the foam cutouts his father had pressed into a sheet of drawer liner with a screwdriver tip. Every socket in its place. Everett Colton had never once put a tool back in the wrong spot, and Sam had spent a significant portion of his childhood being corrected for not doing the same. He closed the drawer. He pulled out his phone and called Ray. Ray Pruitt picked up on the 3rd ring, the way Ray always did not on the 1st, because Ray did not like to seem like he'd been waiting, but never past the 4th, because Ray did not believe in making people wait either. "You at the shop?" Ray said. Sam had not told him he was going. "How'd you know?" "You didn't call me for 2 years," Ray said. "Now you're calling." Had to be the shop. Ray Pruitt had worked for Everett Colton for 11 years, from 1987 to 1998, when he'd gone out on his own and opened a small transmission shop on Route 25E that he'd run until his knees gave out. He was 68 years old. He lived 12 minutes from Cumberland Avenue, and he still drove a truck with a toolbox in the bed out of habit. "I'm just looking around," Sam said. "I'll be there in 15, Ray said, and hung up. Sam put the phone in his pocket and walked the perimeter of the shop while he waited. He was looking at the workbenches along the south wall, solid oak, built by his father from lumber he'd milled himself, sanded to the same smoothness he put into everything he made. He was looking at the pegboard above them, the tool outline still painted in orange, some hooks empty now, some still holding what had been there when his father left. He was looking at the floor. He was always going to look at the floor eventually. The shop had a poured concrete floor, original to the building, with one exception. In the northeast quadrant, roughly 8 feet from the north wall and 6 feet from the east, there was a section of floor that was slightly different from the rest. Not dramatically. You would not notice it if you were not looking. The texture was marginally finer, the color a shade or 2 lighter. Sam had noticed it when he was 12 years old. He had asked his father about it. Everett had said, "Patch from a waterline repair," and moved on to something else. Sam had believed him, or he had not believed him. He had been 12. He was looking at it now. Ray arrived at 9:53 in the morning, 16 minutes after the phone call. He came through the entry door with a cup of gas station coffee in each hand and set one on the workbench next to Sam without comment. "Not as bad as I thought," Ray said, looking around. "I kept the heat on low," Sam said. "Didn't want the pipes." Ray walked the shop the way a mechanic walks a shop, not like a customer, not like an inspector, but like someone reading a room in a language they were taught before they could read words. He opened a drawer in the tool chest, closed it. He put his hand on the lift. He looked at the pickup with the open hood. 4-3? Ray said, looking at the engine. "Think so. Your dad was working on it?" "Must have been." Ray nodded. He pulled a shop rag from his back pocket. He carried one always, same as Everett always had, and wiped his hands with it, even though he hadn't touched anything dirty yet. "It was just what you did in a shop." "What are you thinking?" Ray asked. Sam picked up the gas station coffee. It was bad. He drank it anyway. "Linda wants to sell," he said. Ray did not say anything right away. He looked at the floor instead, the way Ray did when he was thinking and did not want to fill the space with something that wasn't ready yet. "What do you want?" Ray said finally. Sam looked around the shop, at the tool chest, at the benches his father had built, at the lift, at the faint rectangle of different concrete in the northeast corner that his father had said was a patch from a waterline repair 40 years ago. "I don't know yet," he said. "That's why I'm here." Ray drank his coffee. "All right," he said. "Then we look around." They spent the next 2 hours doing exactly that. Not with any particular goal. Just moving through the space the way you move through something you haven't decided about yet, slowly, handling things, putting them back. Sam found a box of his father's handwritten service invoices in a filing cabinet under the south bench, going back to the early 80s. The handwriting was precise and small, the kind of handwriting that took patience and meant it. He looked at a few pages and put the box aside. Ray found a set of micrometers in a leather roll case that he held up and looked at for a long time. "These are good," Ray said. "Take them," Sam said. Ray shook his head once firmly and put them back. At about 11:34 in the morning, Sam went outside and sat on the concrete apron along the south wall where the sun had come around enough to matter. The temperature was in the low 40s. He had not been back to this building in 2 years. There had been a period after Carol when he thought about things the way you think about them, when you can't yet do anything at a distance, with a provisional acceptance that is not peace but is the closest you can manage. He had come through most of that. He still set 2 coffee cups out occasionally before remembering, but he had come through most of it. He sat on the concrete and listened to Cumberland Avenue. A truck going north toward the Gap, a dog somewhere behind, wind in the ridge trees. You could hear the mountain from everywhere in Middlesboro if you listened. Ray came and sat next to him without being asked. They drank the rest of the bad coffee. After a while, Ray said, "Your dad didn't put in any water lines in that corner." Sam looked at him. "I was here," Ray said. 11 years. I'd have remembered a water line repair. We'd have done it." Sam did not say anything. "I'm not saying anything," Ray said. "I'm just saying what I know." He crushed his coffee cup and put it in his jacket pocket. He stood up. "I'm going to get lunch," Ray said. "You want me to bring something back?" "No," Sam said. "I think I'm going to stay a while." Ray nodded. He walked to his truck. He did not say anything else about the floor, and Sam did not either, and that was fine. That was one of the things about Ray. He understood when a man needed to think without somebody narrating his thinking for him. Sam sat on the cold concrete apron in the November sun and looked at the bay door and thought about what his father had said 40 years ago. Patch from a waterline repair. A man who organized every socket by size and closed every drawer when he left and painted the tool outlines on the pegboard in orange so you always knew what was missing. That man had a patch in his floor that didn't match the rest. His phone buzzed. Linda, a text message. "Dad, did you have a chance to look at the transfer authorization? Developer needs answer by Thursday. Just let me know." He looked at the message for a moment. Then he put the phone face down on the concrete beside him. He stood up. He went back inside. Sam went to the northeast corner and crouched down. Up close, the difference in the concrete was more apparent than it was from across the room. The aggregate was finer, the finish smoother. His father had been careful about it, careful enough that you would have to be looking to see it, but he had not been able to make new concrete behave exactly like old concrete, and 40 years of oxidation had widened the gap between them just enough. The patch was roughly rectangular, about 4 feet by 5. Sam put his hand flat on it. It was the same temperature as the rest of the floor. He stood back up and looked around the shop for the pry bar. It was on the pegboard in its outlined space, right where it was supposed to be. His father's pry bar, a 30-inch bar with a worn handle that Everett had wrapped with black friction tape in 1983, and rewrapped maybe 4 times since without ever replacing the bar itself. Sam took it off the hook. He went back to the corner. He crouched again and looked at the edges of the patch. His father had feathered them well. The transition from old concrete to new was gradual, beveled slightly inward. But at the north edge, closest to the wall, there was a gap. Not a crack, exactly, more like a seam. A deliberate seam, if you thought about it that way. He looked at it for a long time. Then he went to the workbench and found a flashlight. His father kept one in the third drawer from the left center bench because that was where a flashlight belonged. It was still there. The batteries were dead. He went to the supply cabinet on the east wall and found a 4-pack of D-cells, opened it, loaded the flashlight, and went back to the corner. He shone the light along the seam at the north edge. There was a gap there of about a 1/4 inch, and at the west end of that seam, where it met the perpendicular seam running south, the concrete had a small raised section. Something below it was pushing up slightly, along a line that ran north-south for about 18 inches. Sam looked at the pry bar in his hand. He looked at the floor. He had not driven 40 minutes to Middlesboro to stand in his father's shop and not look at things. He had come because Linda had a folder with a pre-filled date on it, and a developer out of Knoxville who wanted to put storage units on land where his father had built something with his own hands. He pressed the flat end of the pry bar into the seam at the north edge. He applied pressure. The concrete did not move. He shifted the bar 6 inches west and tried again. Still nothing. He moved it again to the point where the seam turned the corner, the place where the small raised section was, and pressed down on the bar handle. Something shifted, not much, maybe 2 millimeters. But it was not concrete settling. It was something releasing. He pressed harder, 3 more millimeters. Then a sound, a low, dense sound, not a crack but a separation, like a seal breaking that had not been broken in a very long time. Sam sat back on his heels and looked at what he had. The patch had lifted slightly at the north edge, just enough to see that it was not a solid pour. It was a lid. His father had built a lid and poured it to look like a floor. Sam set the pry bar aside and got both hands under the north edge. The thing was heavy. He had known it would be heavy. Concrete always was, but it was not as heavy as a solid section would have been. 2 inches thick, maybe. Reinforced with wire mesh. He could feel the flex in it as he lifted. He got it to vertical, and then Ray came back through the door with 2 sandwiches and stopped in the entrance and looked at Sam crouched in the corner with his hands on a 2-inch concrete panel that was hinged into the floor. "You going to help me with this?" Sam said. Ray set the sandwiches on the workbench. He came over. He looked at the panel, at the hinge mechanism along the south edge, a piano hinge. Sam could see now, set into a steel frame that had been poured into the concrete, the whole assembly designed to look like a seam in a patch, and he crouched across from Sam. "On 3, Ray said. They lifted together. The panel was on a counterweight system. Once they got it past 45 degrees, it moved more easily, then swung to vertical and locked there against a notched bracket his father had welded into the frame. It held. Below it was a steel hatch, flush with the frame, with a recessed pull handle. Sam looked at it. He looked at Ray. Ray looked back at him. "Your dad," Ray said after a moment. Not a question, not even a complete sentence. Just an acknowledgement that Everett Colton had done something here that neither of them had known about, and that whatever was below this hatch was the reason the floor in the northeast corner had looked slightly different for as long as either of them could remember. Sam reached into the recessed handle and pulled. The hatch came up smoothly. Hinged on the far side, counterweighted again, the mechanism precise and well-maintained. A little oil on the hinges. His father had been down here recently enough to oil the hinges. The air that came up was different, cooler, drier. It smelled of metal and paper, and something else, a faint mineral smell, like the inside of a well. Below the hatch, a steel ladder, 8 rungs, bolted to the wall of a concrete-lined shaft approximately 4 feet in diameter, descending into darkness. Sam shone the flashlight down. At the bottom, about 12 feet down, the shaft opened into something larger. He could see the edge of a concrete floor, a metal shelf, the corner of what appeared to be a workbench. He looked at it for a long moment. Then he looked at Ray. Ray was already moving the sandwiches off the workbench, finding a place to set down his coffee. "You first," Ray said. "It's your father's shop." Sam put the flashlight in his jacket pocket. He got his feet on the ladder. He went down. The ladder was cold. 8 rungs of square steel bar welded to a mounting plate his father had bolted into the concrete wall of the shaft. Sam went down slowly, 1 rung at a time, feeling the metal through his work gloves. The shaft was tight around him, not claustrophobically so, but enough that he was aware of the walls on either side, close enough to touch without extending his arms fully. He counted the rungs without meaning to. 8. His father had built 8 rungs. At the bottom his feet found solid concrete, and he turned and pulled out the flashlight. The shaft opened into a room, not large, maybe 14 feet by 16, with an 8-foot ceiling that his father had formed, from poured concrete and reinforced with steel beams. The kind of construction you did not do casually, the kind that required planning and time, and the knowledge of exactly what you were building before you started. The walls were block, painted gray, the paint old enough to have taken on a slight yellow tint in the corners. The floor was smooth, level. Someone had finished it carefully. Sam stood still for a moment and let the flashlight move around the room. To his left, a metal shelving unit, floor to ceiling, bolted to the wall. On it, gallon jugs of water sealed. Canned goods stacked in rows, labels facing out. Flashlights, 3 of them, and next to them a hand-crank lantern, a first aid kit in a red case, a sleeping bag, and a compression sack. Below those, on the lower shelves, cardboard boxes, sealed with tape, labeled in his father's handwriting. The labels were specific. Documents. Drawings 1 through 47. Drawings 48 through 112. Correspondence. Spare parts. Filter unit. He said nothing for a moment. He just looked at the labels. To his right, against the east wall, a workbench. The same oak construction as the benches upstairs, same thickness of top, same careful joinery at the corners. On it, a drafting lamp, off. A wooden tray of pencils and drafting tools, a magnifying glass on a stand, and at the far end of the bench, something covered with a canvas tarp, approximately 3 feet long and 18 inches high, held down with 2 bungee cords. In the center of the room, a metal folding chair, facing the east wall, facing the bench. His father's chair, he recognized it. It had been in the shop upstairs for years, a standard gray metal folding chair with a rubber foot cap missing from the back left leg. His father had taped over the bare metal with a section of garden hose to keep it from scratching the floor. The garden hose tape was still there. Sam walked to the bench and stood over the tarp. He did not lift it yet. He ran his hand along the surface of the workbench instead. The wood was smooth, sealed with tung oil. His father had always used tung oil, said it fed the wood without filling the grain, and there was no dust on it. Someone had wiped it down recently enough that the surface was still slightly tacky in the low humidity of the sealed room. His father had been down here. The realization sat in him without urgency. Of course he had. The hinges were oiled, the bench was wiped. Everett Colton had been coming down here, and coming down here regularly, probably for years, and nobody had known. Sam pulled the chair out from the bench and sat down in it. The missing foot cap, the garden hose tape. He had sat in this chair 100 times in the shop upstairs, waiting while his father finished something, learning to wait without fidgeting, because fidgeting in Everett Colton's shop when Everett Colton was concentrating was not a thing you did twice. He turned on the drafting lamp. The room came up warmer in its light. The shadows organized themselves differently, longer on the walls, shorter on the bench. The canvas tarp threw a defined shadow over the workbench surface. He looked at the shelving unit again. Drawings 1 through 47. Drawings 48 through 112. His father had been an engineer before he was a mechanic. Sam had known this in the way you know the outline of a thing without knowing the interior of it. Everett had taken 2 years at a technical college in the early 60s before money ran out and circumstance redirected him. He had kept the drafting skills. He had occasionally, over the years, drawn things, redesigns of tools, sketches of engine modifications, sometimes late at night, things that Sam had not known the purpose of and had not asked about. He had not known there were 112 of them. He stood and went to the shelving unit. He lifted the first box drawings, 1 through 47, and set it on the bench. The cardboard was firm, dry, the tape still adhesive. He slid it along the top seam with his thumbnail and folded back the flaps. Inside, drawings in protective sleeves, each one numbered in the upper right corner in his father's small, precise hand. He lifted the first sleeve and held it under the drafting lamp. The drawing showed a machine, compact, self-contained, a central cylinder with inlet and outlet ports, surrounded by a housing that incorporated what appeared to be a pumping mechanism on one end and a series of filtration stages on the other. His father had drawn it in 3 views plan, elevation and section with dimension callouts in pencil, precise to a fraction of an inch in some places. The section view showed the interior clearly, a multi-stage filter stack, a hand pump assembly, a gravity assist chamber. At the top of the sheet, in his father's handwriting, portable water purification unit, prototype 1. Below it, a date, March 1987. Below that, designed for single-person operation, no power required. Field serviceable with standard tools, 1987. Sam was 33 years old in 1987. He had been working in the shop. He had been there 6 days a week. His father had been drawing this in the evenings. He pulled the next sleeve, prototype 2, June 1987. Refinements to the inlet assembly, reduced flow resistance. He pulled another. Prototype 3, August 1987, another. Prototype 7, 1988. The iterations continued through the box, year by year, the design evolving, the notes in the margins getting denser, more technical, more certain. By drawing 30, 1992, the machine looked different in a fundamental way. Cleaner, more resolved. The kind of design that comes from 5 years of thinking about the same problem. Sam put the first box down. He lifted the second. Drawings 48 through 112. The first drawing in this box was numbered 48 and dated 1994. At the top, Final Production Design, version 1. Below it, in slightly larger letters than the rest, Rural Water Access Portable Filtration Unit. He looked at it for a long time. Then he heard Ray on the ladder. "Coming down," Ray said from above. "All right." Ray came down the 8 rungs and straightened up and stood in the entrance to the room. He turned on one of the flashlights from the shelf and added its light to the drafting lamps. He looked at the shelving unit. He looked at the workbench. He looked at the canvas tarp. "How long?" Ray said. "I don't know yet," Sam said. "A long time." Ray came to the bench and Sam handed him drawing 48. Ray held it under the light and looked at it the way a mechanic looks at a diagram, not reading it so much as tracing it, following the lines with his eyes the way you follow a circuit. After a minute he looked up. "This works," Ray said. "You can tell from the drawing?" "I can tell from the drawing," Ray said. "Your dad could design, you know that." Sam did know that. He had known it without knowing the extent of it. Ray set the drawing down. He looked at the tarp on the bench. Sam looked at it too. He reached over and unclipped the bungee cords. He folded the tarp back. Beneath it, a machine, compact, self-contained. A central cylinder and brushed steel inlet and outlet ports fitted with quick connect couplings. A hand pump assembly on the right end. A set of filtration stages on the left, enclosed in a powder-coated housing the color of slate. A carrying handle, welded and reinforced, centered on the top. Stenciled on the side in his father's handwriting, now transferred to paint. Colton filter, Field Unit 1. It was the machine from the drawings. It was real. Sam put his hand on top of it. The metal was cool, solid. The seams were tight. The powder coat was unscratched. His father had built it. Ray reached out and touched the inlet port. He worked the hand pump handle, once carefully, feeling the resistance. "Good seals," Ray said quietly. They stood like that for a moment. 2 men in their late 60s standing in a concrete room 12 feet underground, in the northeast corner of a machine shop on Cumberland Avenue in Middlesboro, Kentucky, looking at a thing that an old man had designed and built and hidden and said nothing about to anyone. The drafting lamp hummed softly. Somewhere above them, on the workbench upstairs, Ray's sandwiches were getting cold. On the shelf, in the box labeled Correspondence, there was a manila envelope that Sam had not opened yet. He left it there for now. He sat back down in his father's chair, in the chair with the garden hose tape on the back leg, and looked at the machine, and did not say anything for a while, and Ray did not say anything either, and that was exactly right. After a while, Sam got up and went back to the shelving unit. He took down the spare parts box and set it on the floor and opened it inside. Individually wrapped components in wax paper, each one labeled in his father's hand. Replacement filter media, 3 grades, O-rings in 4 sizes bagged and counted. A set of quick connect couplings, still in manufacturer packaging dated 2019. Pump seals. A small bottle of food-grade lubricant. A folded instruction sheet, hand-typed on an electric typewriter, titled Colton Filter, Field Maintenance, Step by Step. His father had typed out maintenance instructions on a typewriter. Probably the old Royal that had sat on the desk in the office corner of the shop upstairs for as long as Sam could remember. The one with the sticky E key that made every E slightly lighter than the other letters. He could see the light E in the title. Step by step, he put the maintenance sheet back carefully. He went to the correspondence box. He did not open it. Not yet. He picked it up and felt the weight of it, heavier than he expected, heavier than just paper. He set it back on the shelf and looked at it for a moment. Then he went back to the drawings. He pulled drawing 48 again and read the notes in the margins more carefully. His father had written in pencil, small and precise, working outward from the dimension callouts into commentary that filled the white space around the technical lines. Some of it was engineering notation, but some of it was different. In the lower right corner, below the title block, his father had written, "Built for one person to carry. Built for one person to use, no generator, no electrician, no infrastructure. You dig a hole next to a standing water source, and you have clean water in 40 minutes. Most places that need this don't have any of the other things." Sam read it twice, then he looked at the machine on the bench. Field Unit 1, 1 unit. His father had built 1 unit, the prototype, and drawn 112 pages of documentation for it, and stored it in a room 12 feet underground that he had poured himself and sealed and oiled and maintained and visited apparently for years. He had not told Sam. He had not told anyone that Sam knew of. He had just kept working on it. Ray was sitting on the bottom rung of the ladder giving Sam room. Ray understood rooms. He understood when to take up space and when not to. "There's a box of correspondence," Sam said. "I see it," Ray said. "I'm going to leave it for today," Sam said. Ray nodded. Sam took one more look around the room, at the shelves, at the boxes, at the drafting lamp on the bench, still on, throwing its warm circle of light over the drawings. At the machine. At his father's chair, he turned off the drafting lamp. He went up the ladder first, back into the cold air of the shop, into the uneven light of the fluorescents. He stood on the concrete apron inside the bay door and breathed for a moment. Ray came up behind him. They lowered the hatch. They lowered the concrete panel. The counterweights took the weight smoothly. The whole mechanism precise and deliberate. The way everything his father built was precise and deliberate. When it was down, you could barely see the seam. Sam stood back and looked at the floor. His father had said, "Patch from a waterline repair." His father had been 49 years old when he said that. He had been in the middle of something. He had been 37 years into a plan that nobody else knew the shape of yet. Sam picked up his pry bar and put it back on the pegboard in its outlined space. He ate half of Ray's sandwich standing at the workbench. It was 4:22 in the afternoon when he locked the bay door. The light was already going. The mountain cut it off early in November. He sat in the truck for a moment before starting it. He had not called Linda. He was going to have to, but not yet, not until he knew what was in that correspondence box. Everett Colton did not order things randomly. He had wanted Sam to find that one last. The correspondence box was the last thing on the shelf for a reason, and when Sam opened it the next morning, he understood why his father had spent 40 years in a room nobody knew existed, and why none of it had ever been about the money. He came back the next morning as at 7:15. He had not called Linda. He had decided the night before that he did not yet know enough to say anything worth saying. When you did not know enough, you went back and looked more carefully. His father had taught him that not in words, but in the way Everett Colton approached every problem that came into the shop. Ray was already there when he arrived, standing on the apron with 2 cups of the same bad gas station coffee. Sam took the cup. They went inside. They opened the hatch without ceremony. Sam went down first, the same as yesterday. He turned on the drafting lamp. Ray came down behind him and turned on the hand-crank lantern from the shelf, which threw a steadier light than the flashlight had. The room looked the same. Of course it looked the same. Rooms do not change overnight. But there was something different about walking into it the second time, a settling, a kind of acknowledgement that this was real and was going to keep being real, that the drawings in the machine and his father's chair with the garden hose tape were not things he had imagined. Sam went directly to the correspondence box. He set it on the bench and opened it. Inside, file folders hanging in a cardboard frame, each one tabbed in his father's hand. The tabs read, Patent Application, Nonprofit Contact, Testing Records, Field Notes, Financial, and at the back of the box, not in a folder but in a manila envelope sealed with a strip of tape and labeled in larger letters than everything else, for Sam. He set the envelope aside. He pulled the folder labeled Nonprofit Contact first, inside. A correspondence file, documents in chronological order, the earliest dated June of 2003, and the most recent dated November of 2022, 4 months before his father died. 20 years of letters, typed, most of them on the Royal with the light E, printed or photocopied, and filed in order. The correspondent was an organization called the Rural Infrastructure Collaborative, based in Lexington. Sam had not heard of them. The letters began formally an inquiry letter from his father in June 2003, describing a portable water filtration unit designed for deployment in areas without electrical infrastructure, requesting information about testing protocols and potential partnership. The response from the collaborative, 2 weeks later, was cautious but interested. Sam read through the file. The correspondence spanned 20 years. His father had submitted the design for independent testing in 2004. The results were in the folder: a technical assessment from an engineering firm in Cincinnati, 8 pages. Conclusion on the last page. Unit performs within specified parameters across all tested water sources. Bacterial and particulate removal meets or exceeds EPA standards for point-of-use devices. Design is mechanically sound and field serviceable by non-specialist users. Recommend further development. His father had received that letter in September 2004. He had not told Sam. He had filed it in the folder, in the box, in the room under the northeast corner of his shop, and he had kept working. Sam kept reading. By 2009, the design had been tested in 3 states. By 2014, his father had filed a patent. By 2019, the Rural Infrastructure Collaborative had written to say they had identified a manufacturing partner and were prepared to move forward with a licensing agreement, pending resolution of the estate planning questions Everett had raised. The letter from 2019 included a number. Sam read the number. He read it again. He set the folder down on the bench and stood very still for a moment. Ray was on the other side of the room looking at the spare parts box, giving Sam space. "Ray," Sam said. Ray looked up. "The collaborative offered $422,600, Sam said, for the manufacturing license." Ray set down what he was holding. "In 2019, Sam said." Ray came to the bench and Sam handed him the letter. Ray read it. He read it the way Sam had read it, first quickly, then again more slowly, the way you read something when the first read doesn't fully land. He handed it back. Neither of them said anything for a moment. $420,000. For a machine his father had designed in the evenings, in a room under his shop floor, starting in 1987, while Sam worked 6 feet above him and did not know. "He never said anything," Sam said. "Not a question." "No," Ray said, "he didn't. If you've made it this far into Sam's story, hit subscribe, because what's in that financial folder is the part I have been waiting to tell you, and we're only halfway through what Everett Colton left behind." Sam went back to the box. He pulled the folder labeled Financial. Inside, a ledger. His father's handwriting, same small precision. Going back to 1989. Every entry dated, every amount recorded, every transaction annotated with a name or a reference number. Sam sat in his father's chair. He began to read. The entries went back 34 years. The first entries were small $10 here, $20 there. Amounts that in 1989 represented real money for a man running a machine shop in Middlesboro, Kentucky on thin margins and thinner months. Each entry had a code next to it, a letter and a number. Family 1, Family 2, Family 3. He paged forward to 1992. The amounts were slightly larger. The codes continued. He kept a running count in his head. By 1992 there were 19 different codes. He paged to 1998. 31 codes. Amounts in the hundreds now, per entry, monthly in some cases. He paged to 2005, 47 codes. Some of the earlier codes had stopped appearing. Others had started. At the back of the ledger, a key. A single page taped to the inside back cover, listing every code and what it corresponded to. Sam turned to it. F stood for family. Each number was a family. Family 1, the Hendersons, Route 9, single mother, 3 kids, 1989 to 1997. Family 2, the Watkins family, Straight Creek Road, father disabled, 2 daughters, 1989 to 2003. Family 3, the Campbells, Pine Mountain, grandmother raising grandchildren, 1990 to present. His father had written that in 2022, 4 months before he died, the Campbells were still in the ledger in 2022. Sam counted the codes on the key page. 156 families. 156 families over 20 years receiving what the ledger recorded as payments for vehicle repairs, with the specific nature of the work noted: brake job, alternator, timing belt, transmission service, and the amount charged to each family recorded as 0. 0, every one of them, for 20 years. His father had repaired the vehicles of 156 families and charged them nothing. The ledger did not say why, in the way a personal ledger doesn't need to say why. The why was in the entries themselves: single mother, father disabled, grandmother raising grandchildren. The why was in the codes and the dates and the small precise handwriting that had recorded every transaction for 20 years, because Everett Colton believed that if something was worth doing, it was worth writing down, and if it was worth writing down, it was worth doing right. Sam pressed his hand flat on the open ledger. He looked at the wall above the bench. His father had been here, in this room, in this chair, looking at this wall with the ledger open in front of him for years. What had he looked at? What had he thought about down here, 12 feet underground, while the shop ran above him and Sam turned wrenches 3 feet over his head without knowing? Ray had not moved. He was standing at the far end of the bench with his arms at his sides, not looking at the ledger, giving Sam whatever this was. 156 families, Sam said. Okay, Ray said. 20 years. Okay, that was all. Ray did not try to add to it. There was nothing to add. Sam set the ledger down and pulled the folder labeled Testing Records inside. Field notes from 37 test deployments of the filter unit, spanning 2005 to 2018. His father had loaded the filter into his truck and driven to rural counties and found water sources, ponds, creeks, hand-dug wells, and tested the machine. He had done this alone. Sam had not known. Ray had not known. Nobody had known, because Everett Colton had not considered it the kind of thing that needed an audience. Sam read 3 of the operator notes. August 2007, Harlan County. Creek source, high iron content. Unit performed well. Met woman at adjacent property who said her family drives 14 miles for bottled water. Left her the maintenance sheet. She asked who sent me. I said nobody. She said that wasn't an answer. I said it was the only one I had. March 2011. Bell County. Standing pond, agricultural runoff. High coliform. Unit struggled at first with the particulate load. Cleared after backflush cycle. Suggest pre-filter addition to next version. Drove home in the dark. Good day. June 2018. Letcher County, Mountain Spring. Good source. Low volume. This unit could serve a family of 4 from this spring indefinitely. Made note to follow up with the collaborative about site-specific deployment protocols. Back home by 8. Carol had kept supper warm. Carol had kept supper warm. Sam stopped reading. He sat with that for a moment. His wife. His father's daughter-in-law. Carol, who had kept supper warm while Everett drove back from Letcher County in the dark, having run a water filter by a mountain spring and taken notes about it in his careful small handwriting. Had Carol known? He did not think so. She would have told him. Or maybe not. Carol had understood Everett in a way that Sam had sometimes felt he did not. A kind of lateral understanding between two people who approached the world in a similar way, quietly and completely. Maybe she had known something without knowing the specifics of it. He would not be able to ask her. He allowed that thought to sit where it landed and did not try to move it. He picked up the manila envelope labeled for Sam. He looked at it for a long time. The tape over the seal was yellowed. It had been there a while. But the envelope was not dusty. His father had wiped the shelf recently enough that the envelope was clean. He slit the tape with his thumbnail, inside. A single sheet of paper, folded in thirds, and beneath it, something small and hard. He could feel it through the paper before he unfolded it. He unfolded the letter, his father's handwriting, not typed on the royal, written by hand, with a ballpoint pen, in the small, precise script that Sam had been reading his whole life on service invoices and parts lists and the margins of engineering drawings. The letter was dated October 14th, 2021, 5 months before his father died. Sam, if you are reading this, you found the room. I always thought you would. You were the one who noticed the floor. You were 12 years old. I told you it was a waterline repair. I am sorry for that. It was the only lie I told you about the shop, and I am not sure it counts as a lie because what I meant was, not yet. The drawings are yours. The machine is yours. The correspondence with the collaborative is current as of this year. David Reyes is the contact. He has been waiting to hear from the family. The number in the 2019 letter is still good. They have a manufacturing partner in Elizabethtown who is ready to move. The ledger is not for anyone else. I kept it for myself. A man should keep track of what he does, not because it needs to be remembered, but because it needs to be done right. You can do with it what you think is right. I want to tell you something about the families in that ledger. I did not help them because I felt sorry for them. I helped them because a car that runs is the difference between a job and no job, and a job is the difference between a family that makes it and a family that doesn't. I understood machines. I understood that. That was all I had to offer, and I offered it. The filter is different. The filter is for people I will never meet, in places I will never go, with water problems I cannot solve by driving there on a Tuesday. I spent 35 years trying to make something that would keep working after I stopped. I think it will work, Sam. You are the only person I know who understands that machines can help people, not just move them from one place to another. You always understood that. Since you were a boy in this shop, you understood that. That is why the room is yours. Dad, beneath the letter, when Sam unfolded it fully, the small, hard object fell into his palm. A key, old brass worn smooth from handling, on a small tag written in ballpoint. Filing cabinet, office upstairs, top drawer, everything you need is in there. Sam closed his hand around the key. He sat in the chair with the garden hose tape on the back leg, in the room his father had built and maintained for decades, in the light of the drafting lamp, and he did not speak for a long time. Ray did not speak either. After a while, Sam folded the letter back into thirds, the same way it had come, and put it in the inside pocket of his jacket. He kept the key in his hand. He went back upstairs. He crossed the shop floor. He went to the office corner, the small partitioned area where his father had done the books, where the Royal typewriter was, where a 4-drawer metal filing cabinet had stood since before Sam could remember. He put the brass key in the top drawer lock. He turned it. The drawer opened. Inside, files organized alphabetically. Behind the files, at the back of the drawer, a sealed envelope. He almost missed it. It was the same color as the hanging file folders, a manila that had faded to nearly the same tan. He pulled it out, on the front in his father's hand. David Reyes, Rural Infrastructure Collaborative. And a phone number. Below it, a single line. He has been waiting since 2019. Tell him Everett said hello. Sam looked at that line for a long moment. Outside, on Cumberland Avenue, a truck went north. The sound of it rose and faded. The mountain was there, the way it was always there. Ray was leaning in the doorway to the office. He had not come in. There's a contact, Sam said, for the collaborative. Ray nodded. The license offer is still open. Ray nodded again. Sam looked at the envelope in his hand. At the phone number. At his father's instruction, delivered from 4 years ago and 4 months before his death, as precisely as everything else Everett Colton had ever done. He looked at Ray. Linda had a 2 o'clock call with a developer from Knoxville. Sam had a phone number on a piece of paper. He put the envelope in his jacket pocket with the letter. He went to the window of the office and looked out at the apron, at the cracked concrete and the diagonal fault line and the weeds coming up through it. At the bay door. At the sign his father had painted himself, the ampersand still slightly high. He thought about what his father had written. I spent 35 years trying to make something that would keep working after I stopped. I think it will work, Sam. He turned away from the window. What he did next took 3 phone calls in 4 days. The 4th day was the conversation with Linda, the one that was hard in the way that conversations about real things are hard, not because of anger, but because of the long silence that came after Sam finished talking, and Linda sat with what she had heard. She did not say she was sorry. Not right away. She said, I didn't know. No, Sam said. You didn't. I thought she started. I know what you thought, Sam said. Not harshly. You thought you were helping. Linda looked at the table. She had her mother's way of going still when something landed hard. You were, Sam said, in your way. She looked up. But I need you to come see the shop, Sam said, before we decide anything, in person. She came the following Saturday. Linda did not say anything for a long time when she saw the room. She came down the 8 rungs slowly, one hand on the wall, and turned and stood at the bottom of the ladder, and looked at what her great-grandfather had built in the ground beneath a machine shop on Cumberland Avenue. Sam stood to the side and let her look. She turned slowly. She looked at the shelving unit, first at the water jugs and the canned goods, and the boxes labeled in handwriting she recognized from birthday cards and grocery lists. She looked at the workbench, at the drafting lamp, at the canvas tarp folded back now, the machine sitting uncovered in the light. She walked to the machine. She put one hand on the top of it, the way Sam had the first time. She didn't say anything. She just stood there with her hand on it. Then she crouched down and read the stenciling on the side. Colton Filter, Field Unit 1. She stayed there for a moment, eye level with the lettering, the way you stay close to something when you are trying to understand it rather than just see it. She straightened up. She looked at drawing 48 on the bench, still there from 2 days ago. She picked it up and held it under the drafting lamp, and read the margin notes in her great-grandfather's pencil. She read them the way Sam had read them, slowly, taking them in one line at a time, built for one person to carry, built for one person to use. She set the drawing down. She looked at the chair with the garden hose tape on the back leg. She did not sit in it. She walked to the shelving unit and stood in front of the box, labeled Financial. She did not open it. She just looked at it, at the label, at her great-grandfather's handwriting. Sam showed her the letter. He let her read it herself, the same way he had. He did not explain it. He handed it to her and stepped back. She read it standing up, the way Everett Colton probably would have. When she finished, she read it again. Not the whole thing, just the last paragraph. She stood very still for a moment with the paper in her hands. Then she folded it back into thirds, slowly, crease by crease, the same way it had come, and held it against the front of her jacket before handing it back. She looked at the machine. She looked at the shelves. She looked at the chair. She did not speak for a long time. When she did, her voice was the same as usual. Not shaky, not loud. He knew you'd find it, she said. He said you were 12 when you noticed the floor. I was, Sam said. She was quiet again. The storage facility developer, Sam said finally. I think we need to call him. She knew what he meant. And tell him? And tell him the property isn't available. Linda looked at the floor. at the smooth concrete her great-grandfather had finished so carefully, in the room he had built with his own hands to hold the thing he had spent the last decades of his life making. She looked at it the way you look at something when you are understanding slowly the full weight of what you are standing inside. "Okay," she said, one word. She did not look up when she said it. Sam nodded. That was enough. The agreement with the Rural Infrastructure Collaborative was signed on a Thursday afternoon in December, 6 weeks after Sam had first driven back to Cumberland Avenue alone with a key that hadn't been used in 2 years. He signed it at the desk in the office corner, on the same surface where his father had done the books for 40 years, with the royal typewriter pushed to one side to make room for the documents. David Reyes had driven down from Lexington. Linda had come. Ray was there because Ray had been there from the beginning, and it would not have been right without him. The agreement transferred the manufacturing license for the Colton Field Unit to the Rural Infrastructure Collaborative, in exchange for a payment of $431,200, the original figure, adjusted upward for material cost increases over 4 years, plus a royalty on each unit produced. The royalty proceeds to fund a rural water access grant program administered jointly by the Collaborative and the Bell County Community Foundation. Sam had called the Bell County Community Foundation the week before. They had said yes before he finished explaining. When Reyes left, Sam walked him to his car. They shook hands on the apron. "Your father would have had something dry to say about all of this," Reyes said. "Probably," Sam said. "He was proud of you," Reyes said. "He mentioned you in almost every letter." Not in an obvious way, but it was there. Sam looked at the bay door. "He never said much to me directly," Sam said. "No," Reyes said. "I don't think he was that kind of man." "No," Sam said. "He wasn't." Reyes drove north on Cumberland Avenue toward the ridge, toward the gap, and Sam stood on the apron and watched the car until it went around the bend and was gone. He stood there for a while after. The mountain was there. The weeds in the cracked apron were there. The sign his father had painted was there, the ampersand still slightly high. What happened next was not Sam's idea, because the thing that happened next is the part that tells you more about who Everett Colton was than any filing cabinet or correspondence folder or machine in a sealed room. The community dinner was Linda's idea. Sam had not expected that. What he had not expected was Linda to call him on a Sunday morning and say, "I want to do something for the people in the ledger." "What kind of something?" Sam said. "A dinner," Linda said, "at the shop, before it gets cold. I want to find as many of those families as we can, and I want them to know." "Know what?" A pause. "That it was him," she said. "That it was Everett. Some of them probably figured it out. Some of them probably never did. Either way, I think they should know it was real, and it was intentional, and it wasn't charity, it was." She stopped. "It was just what he thought was right," Sam said. "Yes," she said. "They spent 2 weeks finding people. Ray helped. He knew most of the families by name, remembered faces and vehicles, and the particular way certain families had come in and been told the repair was on the house and had not pushed back, because pushing back would have cost them something too, and Everett Colton had understood that and made it easy for them. Not everyone was still in Middlesboro. 2 of the names in the ledger were deceased. 3 families Sam could not locate. But of the 156, they reached 61. Some of them said Everett Colton's name immediately without prompting. The way you say the name of someone you have thought about many times without occasion to speak it aloud. The dinner was on a Saturday in mid-December. Sam and Ray cleaned the shop the 2 days before. Tables from the church fellowship hall along the south wall. Somebody brought a ham. Somebody else brought green beans cooked the way green beans get cooked in Bell County, which is low and slow with a ham hock and a patience that cannot be rushed. There were corn muffins and sweet potato casserole, and a coconut cake that a woman named Darlene Price had driven 40 minutes to deliver, because she said Everett Colton had fixed her transmission in 1991 when she had $16 to her name and 2 kids in the back seat, and he had told her the repair was on the house and she had not forgotten. She set the cake on the table. She looked at Sam. "I thought about it for years," she said. "I didn't know how to say thank you to somebody who wouldn't let you." "You didn't need to," Sam said. "No," she said, "but I wanted to." She looked around the shop, at the tool chest, at the lift, at the bay door. "I used to drive past here sometimes, just to look at it. Isn't that something?" She went to find a seat. By 6 o'clock the shop was full, not crowded. Full. The particular fullness of a room that was built for work and is being used now for something that work was always quietly pointing toward. A man named Gerald Watkins, mid-50s, who had grown up on Straight Creek Road and whose father's name was second in the ledger, shook Sam's hand and said, "I knew. I always thought I knew, but I wasn't sure." He looked at the floor. "My dad talked about your grandfather for 30 years. He said there was a man in Middlesboro who understood what it cost to be stuck. A woman named Cecilia Fugit, who was 63 and had raised 4 children alone on Laurel Fork Road after her husband left in 1994, found Sam near the office door. She held a paper cup of coffee in both hands and looked at him for a moment before she spoke. "For 11 years I thought it was the church," she said. I thought somebody at the church was running a program and just not saying so. She shook her head. I asked the pastor twice. He said he didn't know what I was talking about. She looked at the tool chest, at the pegboard, at the orange outlines of tools above it. I thought about it for a long time, and I never did figure out who it was. Now I know. Sam did not say anything. He never made me feel like I owed him, she said. That's the thing. He fixed the car, and it was just done. Like it had always been fine. She went back to the folding tables. A woman named Patricia Sizemore had driven from Harlan. She had been 18 when her mother's car blew a head gasket in 1993, and Everett fixed it for nothing, and her mother had cried in the parking lot because she had budgeted for the repair, and now she had grocery money instead. Patricia was 49 now. She found Sam by the tool chest. I kept thinking I'd stop in and say something, she said, and then time kept going, and I thought it was too late. She looked at the orange tool outlines on the pegboard. It's not too late, is it? No, Sam said, it's not. Ray was at the south wall talking to a man Sam didn't recognize, gesturing with a paper plate the way Ray gestured when explaining something mechanical. He caught Sam's eye from across the room and raised his cup. Linda was at the center of it, leaning forward slightly, hands moving the way she talked when she was engaged. She had swept the office corner that morning without being asked. She was her mother's daughter in the way she moved through a room. Sam looked at the machine. They had brought it up from the room below the day before. Ray had carried it up the ladder in 2 trips. They had set it on the workbench along the south wall, uncovered between 2 of the folding tables, so that it was simply there in the room, the way a thing is simply there when it belongs. People had been stopping to look at it all evening. Some of them put their hands on it. Most of them asked what it was. Sam had answered the question many times that night. By the 3rd or 4th time, the answer had found its shape. A water filter his father designed, starting in 1987 for places without power and without infrastructure, built to be carried by one person, built to work anywhere. People listened. They looked at the machine. Several of them looked at Sam in a way that meant they were recalibrating not Sam specifically, but the family, the shop, the man who had fixed their cars and their mother's cars and charged them nothing, and who had been building this in the evenings in a room they had never known existed. A man named Harold Combs, 72, had been coming to the shop since before Sam was born. He stood in front of the machine for a long time. He turned to Sam. He never said a word, Harold said, not one word about any of this. No, Sam said. He didn't. Harold shook his head, not in disappointment, in something closer to recognition, the recognition that the people we know are always larger than what we can see of them. What are you going to do with the shop? He asked. Keep it open, Sam said. Training facility, for the filter. The collaborative wants somewhere to teach field maintenance and deployment. This building has the lift, the tools, the space. He looked around. It's already built. Harold was quiet a moment. Your dad would have said that was practical. Yes, Sam said. He would have meant it as a compliment. Harold put out his hand. Sam shook it. Harold held on before letting go, the way old men shake hands when they mean something they are not going to put into words. The dinner went until 9:07 in the evening. People left slowly, the way people leave when they are not eager to go. Ray talked to the last 3 people out the door, and was the last person standing on the apron when they drove away. Sam locked up. He stood in the empty shop a few minutes after everyone was gone. The folding tables still up, plates wrapped in foil on the counter. The shop smelled of ham and coffee and the underlying oil and metal that would always be there, baked into the concrete and walls over 50 years. He went to the workbench and put his hand on the machine. Then he walked the shop one last time, closed the drawers he had left open, put the pry bar back on its hook, turned off the fluorescents one by one until only the office light was on. He stood in the doorway of the office and looked at the royal typewriter on the desk. The sticky E-key, the platen worn smooth, the ream of paper his father had kept next to it, half-used, the top sheet slightly yellowed. He pulled out the chair. He sat down. He rolled a sheet of paper into the machine. He sat there for a moment, his hands resting on the edge of the desk, in the quiet of the empty shop on Cumberland Avenue, in the particular stillness of a building that has held something for a long time and has now, finally, let it go. Then he typed one line. The E came out lighter than the other letters. He looked at it. He pulled the paper out. He put it aside and took a fresh sheet and started again. He had time. The shop was his. A mechanic knows that every broken thing can be fixed if you understand how it was built. What I keep coming back to is not the machine, not the 112 drawings, not even the ledger with 156 names in it. What I keep coming back to is a man sitting in a folding chair 12 feet underground in a room nobody knew about, with a drafting lamp and a pencil and a problem he did not expect to solve in his lifetime. He was not waiting for recognition. He was not building toward a moment. He was just working, because the work was worth doing, and he knew how to do it, and that was enough for him. Most of us will never know if anyone saw us clearly. We spend our lives wondering if the people we loved understood who we were, or if they only saw the surface of it, the job, the habits, the way we took our coffee. Everett Colton spent 40 years in a room below his shop. Sam Colton spent 40 years 3 feet above him. They were never closer than that, and never farther apart, and when the room finally opened, the letter said, "I always thought you would find it." You were the one who noticed the floor. That was what the old man had been trying to say. Not the money, not the machine. Just that. If this story stayed with you today, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for a new story every week. And leave a comment. Is there someone in your life whose full story you haven't learned yet, and is there still time?